The scent of lemon polish and old money clung to the air in my parents' house, a smell I once associated with childhood security. The Sunday roasts, the hushed quiet of weekday evenings. Later, it became the suffocating aroma of betrayal, a constant reminder of the glossy surface hiding a rotten core. My name is Elena. For the first 20 years of my life, I existed in the periphery of my own family. I was the quiet daughter, the responsible one, the sensible counterpoint to my younger sister, Sophia. Sophia was the designated star, the artist, the dreamer, the one my parents, Maria and Thomas, spoke of with voices hushed with reverence for her supposed potential. Sophia has such a unique eye, my mother would declare to her friends over coffee, conveniently forgetting my own knack for sketching or my interest in architectural lines. I was simply practical Elena, expected to follow a predictable path, get a sensible degree, find a stable job, marry reasonably well, and essentially provide a reliable, uninteresting backdrop against which Sophia's inevitable brilliance could shine all the brighter. Everything tilted on its axis when my grandmother, my father's mother, passed away. Grandma Eleanor. She wasn't a woman of effusive affection, but she possessed a quiet strength, a discerning taste that felt like a hidden language only she and I shared. In her youth, she had been a successful textile designer, her work known for its intricate patterns and sophisticated color palettes, skills my own mother dismissed as merely decorative hobbies. Grandma Eleanor saw something in me, a resonance perhaps. We'd spend hours in her sunroom looking through her old design portfolios, her explaining the structure within a pattern, the flow of a line. "Look closely, Elena," she'd murmur, her finger tracing a complex motif. "There's always a logic, even in beauty. Understand the structure, and you can create anything." She saw, I think, a shared appreciation for order and elegance that had somehow bypassed both her son and his wife, and certainly her other granddaughter. Her will was a quiet thunderclap in the polite, muted world my parents inhabited. She left some sentimental items to Sophia, a modest bequest to my father, but the bulk of her considerable estate, investments, property, cash, was left directly, unequivocally to me. The lawyer, a kind-faced man named Mr. Abel, read the clause with careful neutrality. To my granddaughter, Elena Vanya, in recognition of her quiet diligence and discerning spirit, I leave the residue of my estate to be used freely and without encumbrance for her to build a future of her own design. He cleared his throat. "The estimated value, Miss Vanya, is just shy of $500,000. $500,000. The number hung in the sterile air of the lawyer's office, feeling abstract, impossible. It wasn't just money, it was a voice from the past, validating me, empowering me. It was Grandma Eleanor's final gift, a shield, a key, a promise of independence I hadn't dared to dream of. My parents sat beside me, stunned into rigid silence. Sophia fidgeted, looking bewildered. Back home, the atmosphere curdled. My parents masked their shock with overly bright, tight smiles. "Well, isn't that something?" my father managed, pouring himself a larger-than-usual whiskey. "Grandma always was eccentric," my mother added, her voice thin. "Such a responsibility for you, dear." Sophia drifted over and gave me a theatrical hug, her perfume cloying. "Wow, Elena, you're so lucky. Imagine all the things you could do," she chirped, her eyes wide, but with an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher then. Envy, calculation? Blinded by a naive mix of grief and disbelief, I accepted their reactions at face value. I deposited the inheritance check into a newly opened account, the numbers on the statement feeling like a foreign language. My plans were modest, practical, me. Finish my business degree without accruing debt. Maybe save for a down payment on a small, quiet apartment away from the suffocating weight of my family's expectations. Grandma's gift felt sacred, a responsibility to use wisely to build something solid and real, just for myself. But my inheritance immediately became the focal point of my parents' relentless ambition, an ambition directed solely at Sophia. Just weeks after the funeral, the acceptance letter arrived. Sophia had been offered a place in a prestigious, notoriously expensive private art program in Paris. It was, they declared dramatically, a once-in-a-lifetime chance, the validation of her genius. "Paris!" my mother breathed. clutching the thick, embossed letterhead. Thomas, imagine! Our Sophia, studying in Paris. The tuition alone is staggering, my father muttered, scanning the fee schedule with a frown that quickly turned calculating. Their own finances, perpetually precarious due to my father's series of failed ventures and my mother's unwavering commitment to keeping up appearances, the right clothes, the right car, the right social clubs, couldn't possibly stretch to cover it. The unspoken solution hung heavy in the air between us: my inheritance. The campaign began subtly, insidiously. Such a shame Sophia's potential might be wasted, my mother would sigh, arranging brochures for the Paris school prominently on the coffee table, her gaze sliding towards me. If only there were a way. My father started talking about family strategy and pooling resources. You know, Elena, he began one evening, swirling his drink, that inheritance, it's a substantial sum just sitting there. Money needs to work. We could look at it as a family investment fund. Managed properly, and by someone with experience, of course, he added, tapping his chest. It could benefit everyone. It's my inheritance, Dad, I managed, my voice small. Grandma left it to me, for my future. And isn't Sophia's future part of this family's future? My mother countered instantly, her tone sharpening, weaponizing guilt with practiced ease. Think of the doors this opens for her, Elena, the connections she'll make. Famous artists, gallery owners. Her success will elevate all of us. It's selfish to hoard that opportunity. Hoard? The word stung. I'm not hoarding anything. I have plans. My degree. Yeah. Oh, your little business degree, she interrupted dismissively. That will always be there. This is Paris. It's art. It's Sophia's destiny. Surely you wouldn't stand in the way of your own sister's destiny. My father tried a different angle, appealing to my perceived practicality. Look at it pragmatically, Ellie, he said, leaning forward, his voice adopting a confidential man-to-man tone I found patronizing. Think of it as a loan, a high-yield investment. Sophia graduates, gets snapped up by a top gallery. You know her talent is exceptional. And she pays it all back, with interest. It's practically guaranteed. Much better returns than letting it sit in some low-interest savings account. How can you guarantee returns on art? I asked, bewildered. Talent like Sophia's? It's a sure thing, he insisted, waving away my doubts. Trust me, I know investments. Given his track record, this wasn't exactly reassuring. The pressure was relentless, a daily siege. Every meal, every phone call, every quiet moment seemed to circle back to Paris, Sophia, and the money. They painted glorious futures founded on Sophia's success, implicitly framing my reluctance as petty jealousy, a failure to support the family. Sophia, caught in the middle or perhaps playing her part, alternated between tearful appeals. Elena, please, this is my dream. Don't you want me to be happy? And wounded silence, making me feel monstrously cruel. My resolve began to fray under the constant emotional assault. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe this was the best use of the money. The final betrayal was cloaked in bureaucracy and paternalistic reassurance. One evening, my father spread a sheaf of documents across the dining table. Just some standard paperwork for the inheritance, Ellie, he said briskly, adjusting his glasses. Tax efficiency, setting up a proper trust structure. Mr. Abel recommended it. Protects your assets long term. He spoke quickly, peppering his explanation with financial terms. Fiduciary duty, probate avoidance, asset allocation designed to overwhelm and confuse me. Why do I need a trust? Can't I just manage it myself? I asked, hesitant. Oh, it's far too complex for you to handle alone, dear, my mother chimed in, placing a cup of chamomile tea beside me. Her hand trembled slightly. Your father knows best about these things. He just wants to make sure your grandmother's gift is secure. It just simplifies things, my father added smoothly. Gives me the ability to manage the tax filings, make necessary adjustments quickly. Standard procedure for an estate this size. See this clause here? He pointed to a dense paragraph. Just temporary signatory authority, purely for administrative purposes. Allows me to act swiftly on your behalf if needed. Avoid delays. You'll still be the sole beneficiary, of course. It's all there in black and white. He tapped a pen impatiently. Just sign here, here, and here. Sophia was conveniently out with friends. The house felt quiet, expectant, exhausted from weeks of resistance, confused by the jargon, and clinging to a desperate, foolish hope that my father did have my best interests at heart, that this was just procedure. I signed. My signature felt small and uncertain on the heavy pages. A week later, Sophia's excited packing filled the house. Suitcases overflowed with new clothes my mother had insisted she needed for Paris. My parents hosted a lavish farewell party, beaming as friends and neighbors congratulated them on Sophia's glittering future. Our daughter, the artist, off to conquer Paris, my father boomed, raising a toast. Cornering him near the overflowing buffet table, I asked quietly, Dad, about the repayment plan for the investment? When Sophia starts selling her work? He clapped me on the shoulder, his joviality forced. Plenty of time for that, Ellie. Details, details. Let the girl settle in first. Tonight, we celebrate. He turned away, drawn into a conversation about property values, leaving me standing alone amidst the cheerful crowd, a cold knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Sophia left in a flurry of tears and air kisses. Her social media feed quickly became a vibrant stream of Parisian life, posing by the Seine, sketching in sun-dappled cafes, attending gallery openings with impossibly chic new friends. Captions effused about artistic breakthroughs and invaluable experiences, often tagged with grateful and has support a family. It was nearly 2 months after her departure, driven by that persistent knot of unease, that I finally logged into my online bank account. The balance stared back at me. 347,12. The screen blurred. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. I thought it was a mistake, a glitch, a catastrophic error. I refreshed the page. 347,12. I ran downstairs, clutching my phone. The trust documents I'd retrieved from my desk crumpled in my hand. I found my father in his study reading the financial pages. Dad, the money, it's gone. My inheritance is all gone. He looked up slowly, folding his newspaper with deliberate care. He didn't feign surprise. His expression shifted from mild annoyance at the interruption to a kind of weary justification. Now, Elena, calm down. It's not gone. It's been utilized. Utilized? What are you talking about? Where is it? We had to act quickly, he said, finally looking away, studying a spot on his mahogany desk. The deadlines for Sophia's tuition, the apartment deposit in Paris, they were absolute, non-negotiable. Those papers you signed, the signatory authority, it was the only way to ensure the funds were transferred in time. The room tilted. You used the signatory authority to take all of it? The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it felt like a physical blow. You stole it. The whisper was hoarse. Don't be dramatic, Elena, my mother said sharply, appearing in the doorway as if summoned. She strode into the room, placing herself protectively beside my father. We didn't steal anything. We invested it in your sister. Sophia has extraordinary talent, Elena. You must see that. This was a necessary step for her future, for the family's future. What family? I finally screamed, the sound tearing from my raw throat. Tears streamed down my face, hot and furious. A family that cannibalizes one child to feed the other? You sacrificed me. That money was mine. Grandma gave it to me. And what, realistically, would you have done with it? Thomas scoffed, regaining some of his bluster now that the initial confession was over. Paid off student loans for that dreary business degree? Bought some poky little flat? Honestly, Elena, be realistic. Sophia is going to move in circles you can't even imagine. She'll meet influential people, bring prestige to this family. This investment will pay dividends for decades. You should be proud to have contributed to her journey. Proud? I choked out the word. You expect me to be proud that you robbed me and left me with nothing? Oh, stop being so melodramatic, Maria snapped, her face hard. You still have your health, your part-time job. You're resourceful. You'll manage. Sophia is sensitive. She needs this support. It was the right decision, the only decision. Their utter lack of remorse, the chilling certainty in their voices that they were justified, that my future was expendable. It extinguished the last flicker of hope, the last shred of daughterly affection. The scent of lemon polish seemed to coat my tongue, thick and bitter. They hadn't just taken my money. They had fundamentally denied my worth, my right to my own future, my own dreams. I was merely collateral damage in the pursuit of Sophia's glory. That night, under the cloak of darkness, I packed a single worn suitcase. I gathered the few $100s I had painstakingly saved from my weekend shifts, shelving books at the university library. Looking around the bedroom that had been mine for 20 years, the posters on the wall, the worn teddy bear on the shelf, artifacts of a girl who no longer existed, I felt nothing but a vast, aching emptiness. There was nothing left for me in this house, in this town, in this family. Before the first hint of dawn painted the sky, I slipped out the back door. I didn't leave a note. Silence felt like the only language they might eventually understand. I walked down the manicured suburban street, away from the house built on lies and entitlement, into an unknown, terrifying future. The air was cold, biting. In my pocket, my fingers closed around the 347.12 I had withdrawn from the ATM. All that remained. In my chest, beneath the crushing weight of betrayal, a tiny, hard seed of resentment began to germinate, putting down tentative, bitter roots. I didn't know how, but I knew with a certainty that surprised me that this was not the end of my story. The ensuing years were a harsh education in scraping by. I landed in a sprawling, indifferent city hundreds of miles away, chosen at random from a bus schedule. Anonymity was my only shield. Survival meant a relentless cycle of low-wage jobs, scrubbing toilets in cheap motels, serving greasy food in all-night diners, enduring the back-breaking chill of stocking frozen food aisles overnight. Home became a rotating cast of shared apartments, each more depressing than the last. The perpetual smell of damp carpets, the soundtrack of arguing neighbors through thin walls, the constant low-grade anxiety of making rent. There was Anna, the perpetually weeping roommate, Marco, who stole my food, the landlord who tried to charge me for pre-existing water stains. "Is problem you make," he'd insisted, jabbing a finger at the ceiling. "You pay." I learned to fight small necessary battles. Loneliness was a constant, unwelcome shadow. The easy camaraderie I saw among others felt like a world away. Betrayal had left me wary, hesitant to trust. Holidays were the worst, amplifying the silence, the absence of connection. And always there was the simmering bitterness, fueled by occasional masochistic glances at Sophia's online life. Pictures of her laughing with friends in Parisian gardens, posing thoughtfully in front of famous artworks, attending glamorous events. Captions spoke of inspiration, passion, the beauty of her chosen path, often punctuated with gratitude for her incredibly supportive family. Each carefully curated image felt like a deliberate flaunting of the life built on my stolen inheritance, a fresh jab at the wound that refused to heal. "Living the dream," one caption read under a photo of her at a gallery opening, champagne flute in hand. My dream, I thought bitterly, scrubbing grime from a shower floor. There were moments when despair felt absolute, when the sheer grinding unfairness of it all threatened to extinguish the last spark of hope. I remember one particularly bleak winter evening, huddled in my threadbare coat in a bus station after losing yet another job, watching families greet each other with hugs, wondering if I would ever feel that kind of simple belonging again. The $12 in my pocket wouldn't even cover a motel room. The temptation to just give up, fade away, was immense. But then I'd remember Grandma Eleanor's face, her quiet encouragement, her belief in my discerning spirit. "Understand the structure, Elena, and you can create anything." The resentment, that hard little seed, hadn't died. It had taken root, drawing strength from the hardship, twisting into something new, a cold, steely resolve. They thought they had discarded me, reduced me to nothing more than a footnote in Sophia's story. They were profoundly mistaken. I wouldn't just survive, I would claw my way back. I would build something magnificent from the wreckage, and one day I would return and show them exactly what and who they had thrown away. My hands, though calloused and often aching, hadn't forgotten the language of design. Late at night, huddled under a single bare bulb in whatever rented room I occupied, I started sketching again. Not just clothes or patterns, but spaces. Floor plans for apartments that felt logical and calm. Designs for furniture that was both beautiful and functional. Color palettes that evoked serenity instead of chaos. It was more than an escape. It was reclaiming a part of myself, a connection to Grandma Eleanor, a way to impose order on the disarray of my life. I haunted libraries, borrowing stacks of used books on interior design, architectural history, even basic engineering principles. I used the library computers to take free online courses in drafting software, squinting at tutorials late into the night. The turning point arrived disguised as drudgery. I was part of a cleaning crew for a small, respected architectural firm, Harrison and Associates. One evening, emptying wastebaskets, I overheard the principal, Mr. Robert Harrison, a man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being brilliant but demanding, arguing with a junior designer over a challenging historic brownstone renovation. No, no, that flow is all wrong. You're fighting the bones of the building, he'd snapped, frustration evident in his voice. We need something fresh, something that respects the past but isn't enslaved by it. That night, fueled by exhaustion, desperation, and a reckless surge of audacity, I stayed late after my shift. Using cheap drawing supplies I'd hoarded, I sketched out 3 alternative floor plans and perspective views for the brownstone's main living area, incorporating some innovative storage solutions and a traffic flow that felt intuitive, respectful of the building's original layout but adapted for modern living. Before clocking out, heart-pounding, I slipped the folder marked only Brownstone Ideas anonymously onto Mr. Harrison's imposing oak desk. I expected nothing, perhaps even termination if I was found out. The next afternoon, Mr. Harrison summoned the cleaning crew supervisor, asking who had been assigned to his office the previous night. My stomach plummeted, but instead of anger, his expression was one of intense curiosity when I was pointed out. He held up my sketches. "Did you draw these?" he asked, his sharp eyes scrutinizing me. "Yes, sir," I mumbled, bracing for the worst. He studied them again, then looked back at me. "You're wasted pushing a vacuum," he stated bluntly. "There's raw talent here. Untrained, but the spatial sense, it's instinctive." "Where did you learn this?" I stammered out a brief, edited version of my story, an interest in design, self-study, no formal training. He listened intently, tapping a pen against his chin. "I need an apprentice," he said finally. "Someone to fetch coffee, organize the sample library, run errands, and learn everything I can teach them. The pay is abysmal. The hours are terrible. Interested?" It felt like a lifeline thrown into a raging sea. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Yes, absolutely." Mr. Harrison became the mentor I desperately needed. He was exacting, critical, and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of design history and technique. "Details matter, Elena," he'd bark, pointing out a misaligned seam on a fabric sample or an awkward transition between flooring materials. "God is in the details, and so is the budget." He pushed me relentlessly, forcing me to refine my drawing skills, to articulate my design choices, to understand the complex interplay of light, color, texture, and form. He taught me how to read blueprints, how to communicate with contractors, how to manage client expectations. "The client is often wrong, but always the client," he'd grumble. He shared stories of his own struggles starting out, the triumphs and disasters. It wasn't just technical skill he imparted, but a philosophy of design. Thoughtful, rigorous, client-focused. For 5 years, I dedicated myself completely to the apprenticeship. I arrived early, stayed late, absorbed everything. The abysmal pay meant continuing to live frugally, but the intellectual and creative nourishment was richer than anything I'd ever known. My personal style began to solidify, echoing Grandma Eleanor's appreciation for structure, but infused with a modern sensibility. Clean lines, luxurious but durable materials, unexpected juxtapositions, and always that meticulous attention to detail Mr. Harrison demanded. Slowly, tentatively, I began taking on small side projects, referred by colleagues or Mr. Harrison himself. Redesigning a cramped neighborhood bakery, transforming a cluttered artist's loft into a functional live workspace. Each completed project built my confidence and my portfolio. Positive word of mouth began to spread. "Elena has an incredible eye," clients would say. "She really listens." After 7 years away from the life that had rejected me, I stood on the precipice of something new. Mr. Harrison, seeing my readiness, offered not just his blessing, but practical advice and introductions. Armed with a solid portfolio, a growing list of satisfied clients, and a small business loan secured against my demonstrable earning potential, I took the leap. I formally registered my own design firm, Elena Vanya Interiors, using my grandmother's surname as a quiet tribute and a declaration of my reclaimed identity. Success wasn't instantaneous, but it was steady, built brick by painstaking brick on a foundation of relentless hard work, innovative design, and uncompromising quality. I specialized in high-end residential projects, apartments overlooking the park, sprawling suburban estates, and boutique commercial spaces like independent bookstores, art galleries, and upscale restaurants. My firm gained recognition, features in glossy design magazines, industry awards. My clientele grew to include tech entrepreneurs, finance executives, artists, people who valued bespoke design and flawless execution. Within 10 years of fleeing my family home with less than $400, I was not merely financially independent. I was wealthy, respected, a recognized name in a competitive field. I lived in a spacious penthouse apartment with panoramic city views, filled with carefully chosen furniture and art, a space I had designed entirely for myself. I had become, through sheer force of will and talent, the embodiment of the success my parents had craved, but for the daughter they had deemed expendable. And out of a kind of detached, morbid curiosity, I occasionally searched for news of my family online. Their digital footprint was predictable. They still lived in the same house, its lemon-polished gleam presumably intact. Thomas's business seemed to limp along. No major successes, no obvious failures. Maria remained active in her local charities, photos showing her smiling brightly at luncheons and committee meetings. Sophia had returned from Paris after about 3 years. The anticipated art world stardom hadn't materialized. She ran a small gallery in our hometown, primarily showing her own abstract paintings alongside work by other local artists. It looked adequate, respectable even. Family photos still appeared periodically. Birthdays, holidays, projecting an image of unwavering unity. I was, naturally, absent from this narrative, erased like a misplaced brushstroke. Sophia's own posts sometimes held a flicker of something sharp when mentioning developments in the design world, perhaps a veiled reference to my rising profile. But it was always quickly papered over, with pronouncements about artistic integrity versus commercialism. True art feeds the soul, not the wallet, one particularly pointed caption read. The resentment within me had cooled over the years, transforming from fiery rage into a cold, patient ember. The pain of the betrayal hadn't vanished, but it no longer consumed me. Instead, it fueled me. I hadn't forgotten. I certainly hadn't forgiven. And as my influence grew, as my resources multiplied, I knew, with chilling certainty, that the time for balancing the scales was drawing near. The instrument of my return arrived cloaked in professional opportunity. A prominent development group, known for its upscale projects, announced plans for a landmark boutique hotel in my hometown. They envisioned it as the absolute pinnacle of luxury and sophistication for the entire region, a statement piece. And they specifically sought out Elena Vanya Interiors to design the interiors, citing my firm's portfolio, our reputation for bespoke elegance, innovative concepts, and flawless execution. The contract was substantial, the project high profile, offering a platform that was impossible to refuse. Returning wasn't solely about vengeance now, it felt like a necessary completion of a circle. It was about rewriting the narrative they had tried to impose on me, demonstrating unequivocally the value they had so carelessly discarded. It was time for Maria, Thomas, and Sophia to witness firsthand the woman I had become, the woman whose future they had stolen, the woman whose success they would now be forced to confront, and undoubtedly envy. My homecoming was meticulously planned, deliberately low-key. I didn't send advance warnings or make grand announcements. I booked a sprawling suite at the town's best existing hotel, the Grand Heritage, under my professional name, Elena Vanya. My team and I began work immediately, immersing ourselves in meetings with the architects, the development group, contractors, and local artisans we intended to commission. My presence, however discreet I tried to be, inevitably created ripples in the town's placid social pond. Elena Vanya, the designer? Isn't she Thomas and Maria's daughter, the quiet one? The whispers started, laced with surprise and curiosity. It didn't take long for the news to reach my family. The first overture was an email from my mother, arriving just days after a local paper ran a small piece about the hotel project naming my firm. Her tone was a masterclass in feigned sweetness and astonished delight. Subject, Elena darling, such wonderful news. My dearest Elena, imagine our surprise and delight to read that you're back in town and working on the new hotel project. What a truly remarkable achievement. We had absolutely no idea your career had become well, so significant. Your father and I are simply bursting with pride. It feels like ages since we last properly connected. We would absolutely love to see you while you're here. Perhaps dinner at the house one evening? Or lunch at the club? Do let us know what suits your undoubtedly busy schedules. So much love, Mom. No apology. No acknowledgement of the 12 years of silence. The circumstances of my departure. Just a seamless attempt to reinsert themselves into my life now that I was successful. Someone they could boast about. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away, hardening my resolve. I let the email sit for 2 days before sending a brief, polite reply. Subject, Re. Elena darling, such wonderful news. Maria, thank you for your message. Yes, the hotel project is quite demanding and occupies the vast majority of my time currently. My schedule is unfortunately booked solid for the foreseeable future. Regards, Elena Vanya. Using her first name, signing with my professional name. Small signals, but clear ones. I let them wait. Let them wonder. Let their carefully constructed world absorb the tremor of my return. My father tried a different, more direct approach a few days later. He bypassed my assistant and somehow got my direct office number at the temporary project site. Ellie, that you? It's Dad. His voice was overly hearty, falsely jovial. Thomas, just calling to say, well, saw the piece in the paper. Impressive stuff. Really impressive. Listen, I was thinking maybe we could grab lunch sometime. While you're in town, talk shop. You know, I've got deep roots here, plenty of local connections. Might be useful for navigating suppliers, permits, that sort of thing. Happy to help out. His attempt to immediately leverage my success to position himself as a useful contact was so transparently self-serving, it was almost laughable. The man whose poor business decisions were legendary now offered to help me navigate a multi-million-dollar project. Thank you for the offer, Thomas, I replied coolly, adopting his first name as well. But my team and the development group have all necessary aspects well in hand. As I mentioned to Maria, my schedule is extremely tight. Oh, right, tight schedule, he echoed, the forced bonhomie deflating slightly. Well, keep the offer in mind, Ellie, if anything comes up. I will, I lied smoothly and ended the call. Sophia made her move via social media, a carefully crafted direct message appearing a week later. Hey, Elena, it's Sophia. Saw the article about the hotel, sounds amazing. Seriously, congrats on landing such a huge project. Incredible. Listen, if you have a spare moment while you're drowning in blueprints, LOL, maybe swing by my gallery. It's just off Main Street. Would love for you to see what I've been working on since Paris. The casual tone felt forced, brittle, the LOL jarring. Beneath the surface, I sensed the familiar flicker of rivalry, now tinged with a desperate need for validation. This invitation I decided to accept. Seeing Sophia, seeing her work, her life, face to face, was a necessary part of my reconnaissance. Sophia, I typed back, thank you. Yes, I'd be interested to see your gallery. How about tomorrow afternoon? Her gallery was located on a side street, smaller than I'd pictured, but clean and well lit. White walls, polished concrete floors. Most of the displayed art consisted of large, abstract canvases, swirling colors, vague shapes, competent in technique, but lacking, to my eye, any real depth or originality. Sophia herself greeted me, dressed head to toe in artfully draped black linen, her dark hair pulled back severely. She looked older than her years, faint lines of dissatisfaction etched around her eyes and mouth, despite her carefully applied makeup. Elena, thanks for coming, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. So, this is it, my little corner of the art world. It's a serene space, I offered neutrally, walking slowly, pretending to study a large canvas dominated by slashes of muddy purple and green. Your work is very consistent. A defensive edge immediately entered her voice. My focus is on exploring emotional landscapes. Pure expression, she retorted, echoing the art speak platitudes from her online posts. It's not about creating pretty pictures or decorative objects. The implicit contrast with my own field was clear. Of course, I murmured, emotional landscapes require significant dedication. Paris must have been incredibly inspiring. Such a wonderful opportunity. I paused, letting the word opportunity hang in the air. That program? I recall it being extraordinarily expensive. Mom and Dad were so anxious about affording it back then. Sophia's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. She turned away, fussing with the alignment of a smaller piece on the wall. They believed in me, she said, her voice tight. They made sacrifices. Yes, I agreed softly, moving closer, my voice dropping so only she could hear. Sacrifices were definitely made. Quite significant ones, in fact. I met her gaze directly as she turned back, startled by my proximity, and for a fleeting second, beneath the defensiveness, beneath the cultivated artistic persona, I saw it, a flicker of raw guilt, instantly masked. She knew. Whatever justifications she'd constructed over the years, whatever narratives her parents had fed her, deep down, she knew the foundation of her Parisian dream was built on my stolen inheritance. That brief, charged moment crystallized everything. Their envy was a raw nerve. Their denial was a flimsy shield. Their comfortable lives were predicated on a foundational lie, a lie only I held the power to detonate. My revenge wouldn't be a swift explosion, but a meticulous, multi-pronged campaign, designed to dismantle their world piece by piece, using their own ambitions and insecurities against them. Phase 1. The undermining of Thomas. My father always saw himself as a shrewd operator, perpetually on the cusp of his next big break. In reality, his business history was littered with ill-conceived ventures, propped up by bravado and increasingly desperate loans. My firm's financial consultants, experts at discreet due diligence, quickly uncovered his current situation. He was highly leveraged, juggling debts, and actively seeking substantial outside investment for a speculative commercial real estate development on the outskirts of town. It had all the hallmarks of his usual gambles: overly optimistic projections, insufficient capital, and a heavy reliance on finding naive investors. Through a newly established shell corporation, managed by my sharpest legal counsel, we initiated Contact, an international investment group, impressed by the potential of the local market, and specifically Thomas's project, expressed keen interest. Represented by a lawyer whose polished demeanor and favorable terms were designed to appeal directly to my father's ego and greed, the investor offered a deal almost too good to be true. They see the long-term value, Elena, Thomas boasted during another unsolicited phone call, unable to contain his excitement. They're not getting bogged down in petty details like the local banks. This is smart money, international perspective. That sounds promising, Thomas, I replied dryly. Blinded by the apparent validation and the promise of a massive payday, he eagerly signed the preliminary agreements. As anticipated, he scrambled to maximize his own stake, likely taking on even more personal debt and redirecting funds from his existing, precarious business, convinced this was his sure thing. The trap was meticulously set. The Shell Corporation's agreement contained carefully worded clauses allowing withdrawal based on unsatisfactory final due diligence. At the precise moment when Thomas was most financially exposed, having committed his own resources irrevocably, my lawyer would invoke this clause, citing a suddenly discovered zoning complication or environmental concern, issues that were minor or fabricated, but plausible enough to justify pulling out, especially for a cautious international fund. The deal's collapse would be immediate and catastrophic, triggering defaults and leaving him buried under an avalanche of debt he couldn't possibly repay. I pictured his face, the dawning horror replacing the smug self-assurance. The thought brought a cold, sharp pleasure. Phase 2, the social deconstruction of Maria. My mother's currency was social standing. Her identity was inextricably linked to her visibility on local charity boards, her carefully cultivated image as a gracious hostess and community pillar. Her current obsession, as I quickly learned through local gossip diligently gathered by my assistant, was securing the chairpersonship of the annual fundraising gala for the town's Arts Council. It was the premier social event of the year, and leading it conferred significant prestige. She doubtless saw Sophia's gallery, however small, as bolstering her credentials as a patron of the arts. My first move was strategic philanthropy. Elena Vanya Interiors made a substantial, highly publicized donation to the Arts Council, specifically earmarked for the gala's operating budget. The amount was large enough to make waves, immediately positioning me as a major supporter and ensuring my welcome onto the gala planning committee. Maria was initially ecstatic. "Elena, darling, how wonderfully generous," she gushed at our first committee meeting, beaming at me across the polished table. "Having your support, your wonderful eye for style. It's such an asset." She clearly saw my involvement as enhancing her own campaign for chairperson. I smiled back, playing the part of the dutiful, successful daughter returning to contribute to her hometown. Over the next few weeks, I charmed the committee, mostly society wives with time on their hands, with my professionalism, my connections, offering introductions to suppliers who gave us discounts, and my seemingly endless well of ideas. I subtly gained influence, becoming the go-to person for key decisions. Then, at a pivotal meeting to finalize the gala's theme, I made my move. I was thinking, I began thoughtfully, about what makes our arts community special. It's not just the artists, but the support systems that allow them to flourish. What if our theme was something like patrons and protégés celebrating artistic sponsorship? There were murmurs of approval around the table. It sounded elegant, meaningful. We could highlight successful artists, I continued, warming to the theme, and pair them with stories of the individuals, families, or institutions whose belief and support were foundational to their journeys. My gaze drifted towards my mother. "For example," I said, as if the idea had just struck me, "we have our own Sophia right here in town, a graduate of that incredible program in Paris. Her story is so inspiring. We should absolutely feature her. Perhaps she could even say a few words at the gala about her experience, about the dedication of those who supported her dream." I smiled brightly at Maria. "What a wonderful testament that would be to family commitment, wouldn't it, Maria? Highlighting how her family rallied behind her talent, making that international education possible." The color drained from my mother's face. She was trapped. To refuse would be unthinkable. Rejecting her own daughter, undermining the very theme she hoped would secure her chairpersonship. To agree meant placing Sophia under a spotlight, forcing her to perpetuate the lie on the community's most public stage. Maria's ambition warred visibly with her panic. "Why, yes," she managed, her voice strained. "What a lovely idea, Elena. Sophia would be honored, I'm sure." The hook was set. The gala, intended as Maria's social coronation, was now poised to become the stage for her potential humiliation. The pressure on Sophia to perform, to lie convincingly, would be immense. And I, the benevolent, successful sister, would be sitting in the front row, watching, ready to applaud, or perhaps to gently clarify any misleading statements. The image of their carefully constructed world shattering under the glittering chandeliers of the gala was becoming clearer, sharper, more satisfying with each passing day. Phase 3, the artistic reckoning for Sophia. Sophia's gallery, Gallery Sophia, felt like a monument to thwarted ambition. It occupied a small, respectable space, but lacked the buzz and prestige she clearly craved. Her own paintings, while technically proficient, felt derivative, lacking a unique voice. Her Parisian training hadn't translated into the stellar career she and my parents had envisioned. Her social media, once filled with European glamour, now mostly featured local landscapes and slightly desperate-sounding announcements of upcoming exhibitions that garnered polite, but limited, attention. Her envy of my tangible success was a palpable thing, thinly veiled by pronouncements about the purity of her artistic calling. My approach here was multi-layered. Firstly, the new cultural center being built adjacent to the hotel I was designing included a state-of-the-art public gallery space, significantly larger, better equipped, and more centrally located than Sophia's. I used my influence with the development group and the city council to ensure Elena Vanya Interiors had significant input into the gallery's design and inaugural programming. I arranged for the prestigious opening exhibition to feature a highly sought after international sculptor, someone whose work was leagues beyond anything Sophia could aspire to, securing the booking through connections fostered via my elite clientele. This immediately established the new Cultural Center Gallery as the premier art venue in town, instantly eclipsing Gallery Sophia. Secondly, I announced with considerable fanfare the establishment of the Elena Vanya Grant for Emerging Regional Artists. This substantial grant, administered through the new Cultural Center, offered significant funding, mentorship opportunities, and a guaranteed exhibition slot in the new gallery. It was positioned as a major boost for the local art scene. Crucially, Sophia, with her existing gallery and established, though struggling career, wouldn't technically qualify as emerging. The grant program highlighted her exclusion, subtly positioning her outside the circle of artists I deemed worthy of support. Finally, I addressed her reputation directly, albeit indirectly. I contacted a respected, independent art critic based in the nearest major city, someone known for thoughtful but unsparing reviews. Under the guise of seeking recommendations for art sourcing for the hotel project, I steered the conversation towards the local art scene. I casually mentioned Sophia's gallery and her Parisian training. Then, I planted the seed. It's quite a story, actually, I remarked lightly. Her family apparently sacrificed enormously to send her to that exclusive program in Paris. Quite a burden for them, I believe. One wonders if the pressure impacts the work. I then commissioned the critic, through a third party, to review Sophia's current exhibition for a regional arts journal, ensuring they were aware of the family sacrifice backstory. I didn't need to dictate the review's content. Knowing Sophia's work and providing the critic with the subtle context of disproportionate opportunity potentially outweighing innate talent was enough. The resulting review, when published, was exactly as I anticipated: professionally polite, acknowledging her technical skill, competently executed abstractions, but ultimately damning with faint praise. Struggles to find a distinctive voice amidst familiar tropes. The emotional weight suggested by the artist's statement doesn't fully translate onto the canvas. It didn't accuse her of anything outright, but read between the lines, it suggested her highly touted Parisian education hadn't yielded truly remarkable results. It subtly undermined her credibility and raised the uncomfortable question: was the sacrifice truly justified by the outcome? The combined effect was devastating for Sophia. The new gallery and grant program highlighted her irrelevance in the evolving local art hierarchy I was now shaping. The lukewarm review, tinged with the knowledge of the sacrifices made for her, cast a shadow over her artistic pretensions. Her small gallery suddenly felt even smaller, her work less significant. Her carefully constructed identity as the town's resident, serious artist began to fray. As these intricate maneuvers played out, the pressure on my family became unbearable. My father's frantic calls about his collapsing deal became more frequent, more desperate, until I simply stopped taking them. My mother's demeanor at the gala committee meeting shifted from strained enthusiasm to barely concealed panic. She started avoiding my gaze, her hands constantly twisting a handkerchief in her lap. Sophia retreated further, her social media falling silent. They were isolated, cornered, watching their world crumble around them, suspecting my hand in their misfortune, but powerless to confront me without exposing their own foundational guilt. The cold ember within me glowed fiercely. The stage was set. The final act, the public culmination of their downfall, was about to begin. The implosion of my father's real estate venture was as swift and brutal as I had designed. The international investors, citing irreconcilable due diligence concerns related to potential zoning disputes manufactured by my legal team, formally withdrew their funding commitment via a coldly worded legal letter. The timing was precise, catching Thomas at the point of maximum financial exposure. Having poured borrowed money and every last cent he could muster into the project based on the promised investment, he was left stranded. The deal collapsed overnight. Contractors filed liens. Lenders called in loans. The whispers started almost immediately. Thomas Vanya overextended, Thomas Vanya facing ruin. Within weeks, he looked like a ghost, his tailored suits seeming suddenly too large, his face etched with a permanent mask of fear and disbelief. He left several rambling, pleading voicemails on my private line, alternating between blaming the unscrupulous investors and begging me for a bailout. Ellie, please, you have to help me. It's a misunderstanding. We can fix this. Think of your mother. I listened to them once, my expression unreadable, then deleted them without reply. Meanwhile, the Arts Council gala loomed, a glittering guillotine poised over my mother's social existence. Despite the rumors swirling about my father's finances, Maria clung desperately to her role as gala chairperson. Canceling or stepping down would be an admission of defeat, a confirmation of the family's fall from grace. She pushed forward with frantic energy, micromanaging every detail, her smiles at committee meetings stretched painfully thin, her eyes darting constantly towards me with a mixture of terror and resentment. The theme, patrons and protégés, felt more cruelly ironic with each passing day. Sophia had been cajoled, threatened, or guilted into agreeing to give her brief speech. I imagined the tense rehearsals at home, the careful crafting of lies designed to gloss over the inconvenient truth. The night of the gala finally arrived. It was held, with the delicious irony I savored, in the grand ballroom of the Grand Heritage Hotel, my current residence, and a direct competitor to the future hotel my firm was designing. The room glittered with chandeliers, champagne flowed freely, and the town's elite mingled, dressed in their finest, blissfully unaware of the drama about to unfold. I made my entrance calculatedly late, dressed in a custom-designed gown of deep emerald silk that shimmered under the lights. My hair was styled elegantly, my jewelry understated but expensive. I moved through the room with an air of quiet confidence, acknowledging greetings with cool politeness, radiating the success they had tried to deny me. Across the crowded ballroom, I saw them huddled together near a side table, my family. Thomas looked utterly broken, his eyes vacant, staring blankly ahead. Maria stood rigidly beside him, her face a mask of forced gaiety, clutching a beaded evening bag as if it were a life raft. Sophia looked pale and nauseous, picking nervously at the sleeve of her somber black dress. They watched my progress through the room, their expressions a toxic cocktail of fear, hatred, and sickening envy. The evening's program began. Awards were presented, speeches were made. Finally, Maria stepped up to the podium to give her chairperson's address. Her voice trembled almost uncontrollably at first, but she gathered herself, launching into a breathless speech about the importance of art, community, and, inevitably, sponsorship. Her eyes scanned the room, desperately seeking affirmation, avoiding my section of the audience entirely. Then came the much-anticipated patrons and protégés segment. A local sculptor spoke warmly about his high school art teacher. A young musician tearfully thanked the community foundation that funded her studies. And then, the host announced, "And now, we are pleased to feature one of our town's own rising talents, fresh from her studies in Paris, artist Sophia Vanya." A smattering of polite applause. Sophia walked numbly towards the podium, clutching a small stack of index cards. She adjusted the microphone, cleared her throat, and began to speak, her voice thin and reedy. "Good evening. It's an honor to be here." She paused, swallowing hard. Art. Art has always been my passion. And pursuing that passion, it requires dedication and support. Her eyes flickered towards our parents, a desperate, pleading glance. I wouldn't be standing here tonight having had the incredible opportunity to study in Paris without the unwavering belief and immense support of my family. She faltered, her gaze dropping to her notes. Their encouragement, their sacrifices, made my dream possible. This was my cue. Smoothly, deliberately, I rose from my prominent table near the front. A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned towards me. I walked with unhurried grace towards the stage. A stage manager previously instructed met me discreetly with a handheld microphone. Sophia stopped speaking mid-sentence, staring at me, her eyes wide with sheer terror. Maria gripped the edge of her table, her knuckles white. "If I might just add a few words to Sophia's heartfelt tribute," I asked, my voice calm and clear, amplified throughout the silent ballroom. As her sister, I feel uniquely positioned to comment on the depth of that family's support. I stepped onto the low stage, standing beside Sophia, who seemed frozen in place. I smiled, a cool, polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. Sophia is absolutely right, I began, my voice resonating with authority. Family support is indeed crucial for any young artist. And sacrifices. I paused, letting the word hang heavy in the air, my gaze sweeping deliberately over my parents, are often necessary. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Guests leaned forward, sensing drama. For instance, I continued, my tone becoming confiding, almost conversational, yet carrying deadly precision. Not everyone here tonight may be aware of the specific nature, the full extent of the sacrifice made to fund Sophia's transformative Parisian dream. It wasn't funded through careful parental savings, nor the profits from my father's business ventures. My eyes locked onto my parents, pinning them in the spotlight of my words. It was funded entirely, every last euro, by the $500,000 inheritance left solely and specifically to me by our grandmother, Eleanor Vanya. An inheritance my parents, I enunciated each word clearly, deceitfully accessed through manipulated documents and spent entirely on my sister, leaving me, their other daughter, with absolutely nothing overnight. Audible gasps swept through the ballroom. Faces turned towards my parents, registering shock, disbelief, dawning comprehension. The carefully polished facade of the Vanya family didn't just crack, it exploded. They assured me it was a wise investment, I went on, my voice hardening, laced with 12 years of suppressed fury. An investment in Sophia's guaranteed success, her destiny. They told me I should feel grateful to play a part in her glorious future. They threw me away, left me homeless and penniless, while my sister documented her carefree European adventures, all paid for with my stolen future. I turned slightly to face Sophia directly. Her face was ashen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Was it worth it, Sophia? I asked quietly, yet my voice carried. Living your dream on the back of such a profound betrayal? Was the lie worth the ultimate cost? Sophia shook her head mutely, unable to speak, shame radiating from her like heat. Finally, I addressed my parents one last time, my voice dropping to an icy calm that was more terrifying than any shout. And you, Mother. I looked at Maria, whose face had crumpled into a mask of despair, her social world disintegrating around her. And you, Father. My gaze shifted to Thomas, who had buried his face in his hands, utterly broken. Look at me now. Look at the success I built despite your sabotage, without your support. This magnificent hotel project. I gestured vaguely towards the town beyond the ballroom. My firm, my reputation, my life, all painstakingly constructed from the ashes you abandoned me in. You made a choice 12 years ago. You chose the wrong daughter to sacrifice. A deathly silence hung in the room. No one moved. No one spoke. The debt, I stated, my voice ringing with cold finality, is now settled. Your financial ruin, Father. Your social annihilation, Mother. Consider it the long overdue interest payment on the future you stole from me. I carefully placed the microphone back on the stand beside the paralyzed Sophia. Without another glance at the wreckage of my family, I turned and walked, head held high, off the stage and towards the ballroom exit. The stunned silence broke behind me into a rising tide of shocked whispers, murmurs, and condemnations. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. Stepping out into the cool night air, away from the glittering ruin I had orchestrated, I took a deep breath. The cold, vengeful fire that had smoldered within me for over a decade finally subsided, leaving behind not warmth, not joy, but a profound, quiet emptiness. It was the emptiness of a score finally settled, a heavy burden finally laid down, revenge was complete. The fallout was swift and absolute. Thomas Vanya's bankruptcy became public knowledge, forcing the sale of the family home and plunging him into obscurity. Maria, stripped of her social standing and facing the open condemnation of her former circle, became a recluse, rarely seen outside the modest rented apartment they were forced into. Gallery Sophia closed its doors permanently within a week of the gala. I heard, through the relentless town gossip mill, that Sophia had left town abruptly, seeking anonymity elsewhere, forever branded by the scandal. They attempted contact, of course, rambling letters filled with self-pity and blame, tearful emails pleading for forgiveness, even a desperate, rambling voicemail from my mother accusing me of cruelty. I read none of them, deleted them all. They were remnants of a past I had surgically excised. I remained in my hometown only long enough to oversee the final stages and triumphant opening of the boutique hotel. It was a masterpiece of design, lauded in architectural journals, instantly becoming the town's most sought-after destination. It stood as a gleaming, tangible symbol of my resilience, my talent, my victory. Each glowing review felt like another small nail in the coffin of my family's former life. Then, my work complete, I left. I returned to the vibrant city that had become my home, to my thriving business, to the life I had meticulously designed and built for myself, on my own terms. There was no easy happiness in the aftermath, no sudden feeling of euphoric triumph. The scars of the initial betrayal remained, woven into the fabric of who I was. But there was peace, a quiet, deep-seated peace that came from balancing the scales, from reclaiming my stolen narrative, from demonstrating that I could not be broken. I had become the woman they envied, yes, but more profoundly, I had become the woman Grandma Eleanor had glimpsed all those years ago, strong, discerning, independent, the sole, undisputed architect of her own remarkable future. The past, with its lingering scent of lemon polish and deceit, was finally, irrevocably closed. Before me stretched a future yet unwritten, a vast, promising canvas awaiting my next design, and this time, undeniably, I was the one holding the brush.